Welcome to the Rig Doctor podcast, where I'm giving out remedies to soothe your ailing tone and fix your sick pedal boards. I'm your host, Mason Marangella, aka the Rig Doctor. I've been building rigs for over a decade for many of the industry's top pros, and now I'm giving away all my secrets to DIYers just like you. I'm giving away all of my tips, tricks, resources, and easy hacks that I've learned over the years so you can build a pedal board just like a pro. If you want to support this podcast, you can do it in a bunch of different ways. Easiest way is to write us a review on iTunes, or you could follow us on social media, places like Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. You can also support us financially by purchasing one of my products, Vertex Effects, from any of our authorized dealers all around the world. Or you could become a member of our Patreon. We have several Patreon memberships as low as $4.99 a month that give you exclusive access to private live streams, Q&As, exclusive deals and discounts on Vertex products, as well as early access to new product releases. Also, you can get personalized one-on-one phone and email conversations with me, the Rig Doctor, to coach you through your next rig build. This could be as in-depth as troubleshooting a problem on your pedal board in real time with me, or some emails advising you on next steps, on certain pieces of gear to buy, and good stuff just like that. I don't want money, though, to be the reason that you can't engage with the Patreon side. So if you don't have the means to do it at this particular time, that's no problem. We actually offer a free version of our standard account at no charge if means are an issue. That means if you just send us an email requesting a free account, we grant 100% of those accounts, no charge whatsoever. We just trust that once things have changed for you and you can afford the $4.99 a month, you let us know. But until then, your account remains free. I also want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Blue Microphones. Kevin Walt at Blue Mics is just the man. He gave us everything. We have Yeti mics, we have boom arms, we have pop filters, we have everything that a podcaster would need, and we supremely appreciate that. Thank you to Blue Microphones. Today I'm going to be speaking with my good friend, Bennett Lewis. Bennett and I have known each other for many years, and we met on one of his gigs with Maren Morris. I had another friend named Joshua Murdy, who's now out of the guitar game and doing production, introduced us, and we hit it off there and have stayed in touch, and Bennett has used many of our pedals over time with Maren Morris, and man, just a really cool guy, and really got in with Maren Morris on the ground floor, and now she's like, you know, the epitome of country music stars, incredible music. We talked about her a little bit on the episode with Derek Wells, and he's basically having to reinterpret all those studio parts that Derek Wells came up with and put them into live music. But it's pretty cool to hear him talk about how he started with her when she was doing showcases in Nashville, trying to, you know, get on a big record label on a big tour, and then following her all the way through, you know, getting nominated, and I think she even won some Grammys for her last record, so pretty impressive. We talk about Craigslist finds and how we go about finding good deals on Craigslist, and also some good sleeper pieces of gear, some of which were also gleaned from Craigslist, so some pretty good advice there from Bennett. We talk about vintage Fender amps, vintage Gibson guitars, and a whole lot more. I give you Bennett Lewis. All right, we're live. I'm here with my good friend Bennett Lewis. We met, we met through Joshua Murdy.
Yeah.
I think at the Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View, California. And I think you guys were opening for...
That was a Keith Urban tour.
Yeah, that's right. That was Keith Urban. There were so many acts on that bill. I can't remember. I just remember that when you guys were doing the sound check, and I brought some pedals, I think, for Josh to check out, and Josh is like, "Oh, you shouldn't be showing these pedals to me. The better guitar player here is Bennett."
Oh, and, I wouldn't go that far. Josh is a mean player, man. He's a good dude.
And now he doesn't even touch guitars, really.
He's all in the box now.
Yeah, he's just a production guy, and just lives in that world. But I remember you had a pretty cool rig. I think you had one. It was like right when the RJM switcher came out, I think.
Yeah, it was that first the PBC 10, I think it was.
Yeah, and I remember you had it, fully loaded, and I think you had like a old deluxe reverb or something like that.
It's right. I'm looking at it right now. 66. God, I love that thing.
And I remember it was pointed away from the stage. And I think there might have been another amp there too. I don't remember.
I don't recall actually. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was some time ago. And so anyway, I remember bringing like a dynamic distortion and a boost, and I can't even remember what else I brought. But I remember that you had stuck one on your pedal board in one of the loops and was trying it out through your amplifier. And,
yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, this guy's a really great guitar player and a great slide player, and didn't really have much expectation that I would cross paths with you again. And then I think a few years later, I think you bought a pedal from me or something like that, and kind of started talking with you more, and we did some demo videos together out here, man. And went to
full on best friends now.
went to Chez Panisse, the culinary capital of California.
I owe you one for that. That was amazing, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Like restaurants like that, like fancy places, this has hit them really hard.
Yeah, no, big time.
Because so much of what they do is about the service and all that stuff. We just had lunch, so it was cheap,
It was funny though. I mean, it was an amazing meal and everything. I wasn't familiar with that restaurant, and I was actually talking to my dad like the next week, and I said, "Yeah, we went to this place." And he goes, "What? You went there? That's like the birthplace of farm to table or something." And kind of flipped out over it. But man, yeah, thanks again for taking me out. That was great.
Yeah, well, I felt like it was the least that I could do. I remember. Usually when we do some of these demos, we'll pay the demonstrators for their time, and Bennett's one of the few musicians that's just allergic to money. He just didn't want to be paid, so I said, well, we'll take him out for a nice lunch.
Food is good compensation. I'll take it, man.
Yeah, take him to a nice restaurant that equates his value. So yeah, that was really cool, and man, you played great, and unfamiliar gear. I think I brought my telly and a 335, and
that telly, man, the neck on that thing was gold. That was perfect. I love that thing.
Yeah, it is really good. Although I haven't been using it much because it's all of our gear is down at our LA showroom. Close to the time that we did that video, I got a showroom in Burbank. And so I pretty much moved like everything there because we were hosting artists, every day and shooting videos there all the time. And so just kind of having everything available in one place was more convenient. Although those showrooms now in LA, they have it, LA is probably the strictest, I think, right now in California in terms of shelter in place, just because they have the most number of cases in California, at least. And so, there's pretty abbreviated hours for when you can even get in there, so it's kind of like you have like a 2-hour mail pickup window that you can go and grab your mail. And I think that's about it for like the majority of the showrooms, although I understand there's a bunch of bands that are kind of gearing up to start live streaming their previously scheduled tours, but from the respective stages, because it's really a rehearsal, like a rehearsal space for arena tours. Yeah, because it's right next to the airport. So some of these buildings were converted like airplane hangars. Like you could put a jet in there and park it. And so they have the super high, however many 100-foot ceilings and all that stuff. And I could see some of our guys told me that they saw like Mary J. Blige and Nine Inch Nails and people like that with all their cartage gear out, kind of getting ready to do some sort of version of live streaming concerts to some sort of audience.
That's the new normal now, it seems like. Everyone's kind of shifting gears.
What do you think that'll look like? I mean, I guess you can speak, to if you've never heard of Bennett before, he's an amazing guitar player and plays is the sideman for Maren Morris, who's, you know, I mean, you've sort of been there at ground zero as far as like kind of the big level touring. So you've just seen this, like, you know, if we were to chart it, it just is this you know, just insurmountable increase in terms of popularity and fandom and in the size shows you're playing. So what do you think it'll look like, you know, for Maren and the band moving forward, looking, you know, with this in mind?
Oh, I you know, it's kind of anyone's guess, I guess. You know, more information is coming out every day regarding COVID and all this business, but you know, I think there's going to be a hiatus from touring for a minute here. I don't know if it's going to be across the board with everybody. I know that we're kind of looking at next spring to kick off. We had a tour, you know, planned this year, like a lot of people, but we've kind of moved it back to 2021. And you know, I think this fall, it's, you know, I have some friends that are playing some smaller venues. So it's still I think it's slowly going to come back. I think a lot of the smaller shows are going to be, obviously there's less people at them. It's kind of easier to manage, you know, volume. So I like to think that there's going to be live music sooner than later. But that said, you know, it's like everybody's kind of got to play it safe. So yeah, you know, it's really uncharted territory. So I who knows?
Yeah. Do you think that the live streaming thing is a viable option, or something that, you know, you think Maren or other country music artists are going to explore? Or do you think that they're going to sort of hold out to make it the way that it used to be?
I think that, you know, I think it's a case by case sort of situation. It's like, does it make sense financially to do a live stream?
Right.
You know, if you're a small act in your house and you're, you know, playing an acoustic guitar and you can have people sort of, you know, check in and listen to a home performance and, you know, tip you on Venmo or something like that can work. If you're a bigger act and you have to, you know, set up all the production and you know, pay your band and pay your crew and figure out cameras and everything, it's like, are you going to be able to get enough revenue off of the live stream to make it, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? And and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not the business, you know, end with Maren. I just play guitar. So if that's something that she wants to do, I'm fully on board.
Yeah, I think it's really the question of how do you, you know, this came up in one of my other conversations, like how do you monetize it? Like the fans, of course, will love it. They love to see, you know, their favorite artist performing, but how does the artist make it sustainable for them and their bands? So
and not that it's all about money, you know, it's that's not the case, but you know, you do have to cover your costs. Otherwise you're just digging a bigger hole on top of what's going on right now. Yeah.
As they said in The Big Lebowski, you got to feed the monkey, man.
Amen.
Yeah. you got your minimum nut that you got to cover. Yeah, I get it. It's interesting. I saw that, I don't know how entrenched in the sort of the YouTube sphere you are, but I saw that one of these guys that is in Atlanta named Rhett Shull is sort of doubling down on the live stream thing, and he's like creating a whole like live stream. He's basically doing the YouTuber equivalent of like live at Daryl's house.
Oh, really?
In his home studio in his basement, and is creating sort of like a full, you know, like streaming production studio, you know, where they can do this whole thing. I was thinking that, you know, Daryl Hall is really perfectly equipped for this, you know.
Yeah,
they have the house band. They bring in a guest artist, you know, like, you know, he should be killing it right now.
I've seen Rhett's. I think I've seen some videos of him, or he's big on Instagram too, isn't he?
I don't think to the degree that he is on YouTube. I mean, like, I think on YouTube, you know, I feel like he was just at like 100,000 the other day, and he's already at 200,000 like 3 months later.
Damn, good for him.
So he's like really getting some serious traction, and I think when I first did a video with him, I think maybe he had like, I don't know, 10, 12,000 or something like that. So pretty meteoric rise. Oh man, yeah, he's killing it, man. He's like you know, the Steven Spielberg of YouTubers. Everything looks so produced and beautiful, and you know, it just seems like he's just spending an incredible amount of time to get that stuff out there, but it's paying off for him. So
meanwhile, I have my laptop on a cardboard box right now just to get it at the right height.
Well, you know, I mean, there's something to be said about that. Like, you know, have you seen Tom Bukovac stuff?
Yeah, in his garage. It's killer.
Yeah, I mean, that's just on his iPhone. You know, there's no production there at all, and his channel equally. You know, he's like, I think he's like at 30,000 already, just from, you know, since COVID.
And he hates that stuff, it sounds like, and good for him for jumping on board and kind of spreading some knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think he's, you know, I've known Tom for probably 10 years. Yeah, and it's funny because he would always swear off doing this sort of stuff. He's like, oh, I'll never, like for the longest time, he wouldn't even do demo videos, you know. And I think the first one I ever saw him do was of this thing called like the Son of Kong.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and so that was the first thing I ever saw him do. And after years of him being like, I'll never do anything, you know. He's kind of softened up a little bit, so that's good to see.
Probably bored too. There's a lot of time to kill these days.
Yeah, he is bored, but man, you know, he's just got a little musical incubator at his house. You know, his wife is Sarah Buxton, who's, you know, a prolific songwriter. They could just sit there and be in good shape to just take over the music industry between the two of them, just cranking out great songs.
Yeah, she's got one hell of a voice too. Jeez.
She does. Although I don't, you know, I guess she wrote a bunch of those Keith Urban songs.
Yep.
Off of, I don't know if any of the newer stuff, but certainly like a lot of those big ones that really cemented Keith as like a crossover artist, like that first Dan Huff record, the one that they did with Dan Huff.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that was called, like Golden Road or something like that. Anyway. Yeah. So one guy that we talked to a couple of weeks ago was Derek Wells, and I told Derek, I was like, you know, you got kind of like one of the best guys to play these parts that you come up with in Bennett. You know, like how much are you, when you're listening to a record, you're about to go on a tour with Maren, are you saying, okay, I'm gonna do exactly what was on the record, or are you like, I'm gonna kind of quote this but do my own thing? Like, what's your approach on taking the parts that, you know, guys like Tom Bukovac or Derek Wells or, you know, great session musicians do, and then translating that to a live performance? Kind of what's your approach in learning those songs and working it out in rehearsals before the tour starts?
Well, first off, Derek's an awesome dude. I've gotten to know him through Ryan and Maren. You know, they're all good friends, and he's one hell of a guitar player. So it's an honor to get to kind of attempt to recreate what he's doing in the studio. As far as how it all goes down, you know, with new material, we'll get stems and check it out. You know, we'll obviously listen to the album, but I can really zero in on his guitar parts and see what he's doing there. And, you know, often the case is there's 2 or 3, you know, even 4 guitar parts, you know, different tones, different parts of the song. And so you'll have to say, you know, in a live performance, how can I pull, you know, what's the most important thing here? How can I kind of make a hybrid version of that? What is my pedal board capable of as far as jumping from, you know, sound to sound? And that's where that RJM comes in. So we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's you know, I'll find the most important parts, blend them together as best as I can. You know, and that often means maybe playing 2 parts at once, like, you know, figuring out a hybrid picking sort of situation. If there's like a rhythm part and then maybe like a, you know, a picky melody or something. And then, yeah, it's, you know, he's such a tone monster, and he comes up with these great, you know, vibey sounds. And, you know, sometimes I do just want to call him up, be like, hey man, how'd you get that, you know, that chorusy delay thing going on. You know, what exactly was the setting? So, you know, a lot of it's trying to just approximate sounds. But yeah, in a live setting, it's really just what's the most important part, what's going to be feasible for me to cover. And then as far as, you know, sticking to what he's doing versus, you know, taking any liberties, you know, I do feel that a live show sometimes needs to veer slightly away from the album. You know, it's like to make it more exciting or to make it translate in a, you know, to a crowd of screaming people. So sometimes that's, you know, having a little bit more dirt on something. Sometimes it's, I don't know, tweaking a solo. You know, I do like to, I'll improvise little, you know, parts here and there, just, you know, to keep it fun for me too. It's sort of a challenge to say, you know, what am I going to do tonight? But you know, I always, whenever, you know, you're playing anything, the song is the most important thing. So you never want to, you know, have your ego get in the way and say, no, I'm going to play a better solo. It's like if the solo on the album is, you know, that's what people are expecting to hear. So, you know, you can, you know, maybe take a small liberty here and there, but, you know, you generally want to stick to the program. So yeah, you know, it's sort of a song by song situation. But that said, it's always fun learning, you know, whatever Derek comes up with, because that's kind of how I extend my guitar vocabulary, just stealing his licks.
How much flexibility does Maren give you on a solo? Like, you know, if you get too far out there, will she say, hey, that's out of bounds? Or, you know, what's sort of the boundaries that you have to work with when you're, you know, doing, you know, or reinterpreting a solo or something like that?
Maren is great in that respect. You know, we never get like way too far off in the weeds. And generally we're not like extending, you know, we're not doing Grateful Dead jams. There's no like 30-minute, you know, improv sections or anything. So it's like, you don't necessarily even have too much, you know, you're not going to have 5 minutes to go rip a random solo. So, she's pretty much down with whatever we throw out. And that's in part because we have a great group of musicians who are all like-minded in the sense that we're doing what's best for the song, and we're trying to reproduce, you know, something that the crowd will enjoy and Maren will be proud of, you know.
You guys put on a hell of a show, man. I mean, I've seen you a couple times now, and it's really great. I mean, I saw it with what was the first album called?
Hero,
yeah. And then I saw you also on the
Girl Tour.
And it was, you know, incredible. You know, I think actually both were at the Shoreline.
It's I like that venue a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, talking about Grateful Dead, you know, they kind of made that place.
But no, the band, you know, it's like I said, everyone's kind of has the same mentality, and we're all trying to do the song justice. We want, you know, to provide a strong bed for Maren to sing and perform over. And yeah, no one's really letting their, you know, musical egos get in the way.
That's great. You know, it shows. You guys seem very, you know, I don't know what it's like behind the scenes, but from a stage perspective or being in the audience, it seems incredibly cohesive and it sounds great. You know,
appreciate it, man.
But you didn't start at the top. What did it look like in, you know, I want to go like early days, like how you even got that gig, and then, you know, you kind of got on the ground floor there, and you kind of got to watch, you know, her rise as kind of being, you know, one of the premier, you know, country music artists. What did it look like to get that gig?
Well, so it's, you know, I guess we can kind of go back to the very beginning, but I went to University of Georgia for college, and you know, I never really had aspirations to be a, you know, touring musician. I didn't really know that was an option.
Just wanted to be a bulldog.
Just wanted to be a what now?
A bulldog.
Yeah, go dogs, sick 'em. But, you know, I started playing guitar when I was 9, and, you know, I've always been kind of a musical-minded person, and so I was just messing around, dicking around in college, playing at bars just for fun on the side. And I ended up meeting this singer-songwriter named Lira Lynn, who's a great, great artist. And she was kind of just branching off from a band that she was in, and she was starting a solo career. And she needed a guitar player. And so, I said, well, hell, I'll reach out. And so we ended up hitting it off and having a beer and talking. And one thing led to another. And she hired me to kind of go play some shows with her. And we were just doing Southeast regional stuff, Augusta, Macon. And that was my first taste of like, hey, this is A, fun. B, the beer is free, so that's cool. And like you walk away with, I don't know, $50. And and at the time that was a lot of money. And so I was with Lira for 2-3 years, and we did some touring, and she kind of was the reason that I got the bug. She showed me, we opened for Katie Lang for a tour, and so like that, had me traveling around the States with her, and
Nice.
and we just did random things here and there. But that was my first taste of tour life and of what you might call professional musician life. Although I'm not sure, I've never really felt professional. I'm not sure that's a thing. But so after that, Lira moved to Nashville. I moved to Nashville. Athens, Georgia is a killer town, and it's such a great musical town. But there's kind of like a ceiling as far as how far you can go.
Yeah, you got Eddie's Attic, and then
yeah, and so Nashville is the next step, at least in our minds it was. So we both moved there, and then she kind of took some time off to maybe do some writing, I think it was, and I was looking for something to do. And oddly enough, I got a call from a band that was based in Athens, Georgia, and they were about to record an album, and that it was Kevin Barnes from the band of Montreal, and so I went back to Athens for a couple weeks, recorded the album, and then he asked me to join the band. And then so that was kind of the next 3 years of my life was, I don't know if you're familiar with the band, but it's
yeah.
Kevin's amazing, and he's like a musical genius. It's so out there, but I mean, when it'll peak in weirdness, and then all of a sudden, like there's like the best pop sensibility, like right around the corner, and it brings you back in. So yeah, we toured all over the world and Japan and Europe, and it was really cool. But that was kind of like furthering the itch, and that was my first bus tour and a glimpse at the next step of professional musicdom, and
Right.
So that was amazing. And those guys were all family and girls, and I mean it was a trip. That was something that was really special. But it got to a point where I like I said, I had moved to Nashville, but then I joined this band that was based out of Athens. And so after 3 years of that, I said, you know what? I moved to Nashville for a reason. I want to explore, what's there and all the options. And because I hadn't really been, even though I was based out of Nashville at this point, I was on the road like 24/7. So I reluctantly left of Montreal and just kind of jumped into the abyss in Nashville. And that's kind of where Maren comes in. I was taking anything and everything that came my way, and a lot of people do showcases in town, showing their songs that they've written. And there was a guy named Ryan Beaver, who's a friend of mine, and great guy, talented songwriter. And he had asked me to play some pedal steel for a showcase that he was having at the Basement East. And Maren had also recorded some vocals on that album that he released. And so, I'm playing steel all night with him, and Maren came up to sing her song, and she does a great job, and then leaves the stage. And I think we met later that night, but it was very, brief and nothing crazy. And then about a week or two later, I got a phone call from Maren, and she said, hey, I'm doing these acoustic shows, I like your playing, are you available? And I said, yeah, I'm available. And, she wasn't really anything big at that point. She was, I think the EP hadn't even come out yet. But I thought, I'm taking anything and everything that comes my way, and I need to pay my rent, and like, this will be cool. I thought it was a month worth of, acoustic one-offs, and then I'd be done. And lo and behold, it just kept going and kept going. And like one thing led to another. And every day was, some accolade, or she was, getting placed here, winning an award. And 4.5 years have gone by, and that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so how many people in the band are as original as you, as far as kind of being there on the ground floor when she's, doing these showcases? It's just you.
Well, it's kind of funny because our drummer Christian and I kind of always rib each other on who was first. But I guess Christian, and he'll love this video if he ever sees it, I guess Christian was technically brought on first, but it was through Matt Payne, who was the band director at the time. Mm-hmm. And I claimed that I was hired directly by Maren, and I think he has like one show on me, so it was yeah. But as far as like original members, it's Christian and I are sort of the old school guys. We were running bass off a laptop, so we didn't even have a bass player. And then we brought in Josh Murdy for a minute, and he was great. And
he was kind of like a utility guy, though, right? I mean, he was playing keyboard and guitar.
It was funny, not to throw him under the bus, but he's a great guitar player, and he can play a little bit of like producer keys, but he's not really a keys guy. So he'd delete all the keys from that weren't applicable to the song, from the MIDI map. So you could really just like slam it with your hands, and it would like play the right chords.
Got it. No, that's actually, I mean, I guess it's smart. It's like creating like a harmonica or something like that for the song, where you can't play a wrong note no matter what.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but So, but now we're up to let's see, there's 5 of us now in the band. Annie Clement's on bass, who actually just had a baby today, which is exciting. And then Christian Pascal on drums. Eric Montgomery is kind of our Josh Murdy role right now. So he's a great keys player and a great guitar player as well. He's actually one of the few people I know that's like equally well-rounded in both. I feel like usually someone is definitely stronger on something, and but man, he can play keys and guitar very.
All right, so I think where we kind of left off, where it stopped. Do we know where it stopped rolling approximately?
Yes, it stopped right when I told you it stopped.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so we were talking about band members. You got a utility guy who's equally well-rounded in keys and guitar.
Yeah, Eric, and then Matt Butler is our most recent addition, and he's just like a bizarrely amazing keys player, and he plays a lot. He's got a B3 out on the road, and he's also an incredibly. I think he'd probably tell you his main instrument is cello. But he's a monster on the cello, and we kind of use that on a couple tunes, and it's real pretty. Kind of gets that orchestral vibe in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's and then me, and then Maren singing. But it's a really great group of guys and girls, and I mean, we've been having a blast, and it's been a bummer to Maren had a kid earlier this year, and so we had sort of the spring off, and which. It couldn't have been better planned because, we didn't have any shows that we had to cancel because of COVID or anything. But the downside of it is we haven't really played music together in like 6 months now.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting back with them and hopefully making some tunes sometime soon.
Yeah. So for the gig, has your rig changed much since you guys were kind of really doing full band tours, or is it pretty much kind of in the same basic staples, or what do you typically take out on the road, and has it changed much?
I mean, Mason, I'm a guitar player. Of course it's going to change all the time. For a while I was really into, especially like in the Of Montreal days, I liked lower wattage stuff. And my Deluxe reverb is my hands down. It's my favorite amp. And I liked it because you can push them and you can get grit from the amp, and it's great. I did learn that I do like having a little more headroom for the bigger shows, Okay. And so I have switched to. I've been using a 1961 blonde bassman,
Okay.
which is awesome, and also a Morgan SW50R.
Okay.
So just kind of up in that 50-watt
So stereo
range.
rig.
No, well, no, it's not a stereo rig. It kind of depends on the show or where we are. It's usually one or the other. Although stereo would be fun, but with a little bit more headroom, I've been finding I've kind of fallen into using my pedals in conjunction with the more headroom, and it stays together a little bit better, and a little more versatility too. You can get some better cleans if you need them. Yeah. So that's kind of been where I am on the amp front, and then we were talking about the RJM PBC. I switched to the newer, the PBC 6X.
Okay, the smaller one.
Yeah, and it's really cool. The 10 is amazing. I'm not really a MIDI savvy person. I'm not good at that stuff. It's sort of intimidating to me. I think I'm just kind of a closed-minded, old-school person when it comes to that stuff. But that said, the material did require, being able to jump from one patch to another, on the drop of a hat. And so that was a better option for me. I didn't need 10 pedals in the loop. I don't have that much stuff. So having just the 6 options, but still, all the functionality, smaller footprint, that has been a game changer for me. And I had the guys at Exactone, they helped wire it up, and they kind of set up the whole MIDI functionality. They made it sort of dumb for me, which was awesome. So it's super simple.
What's on that rig?
What's that?
What's on that rig?
So that rig it's a RC booster, a King of Tone, that's kind of been my staple overdrive with Maren. It has the Ultraphonics. It has all my stuff's in Nashville right now, so I'm having to go over it in my head. It has the GE7, the XTS modded GE7, which is killer for just a nice mid-range solo boost. And then I've been using the Ventress and the Nemesis by Source Audio for my reverb and delay. Mm-hmm. And those are really cool, especially when you're using the something like the RJM, because you have it has all the functionality of something like the timeline, and I love my timeline. But if you're sending MIDI out, I don't really need to have the screens and everything. So it's a lot smaller footprint, but you still get all the great tones.
How do you dial? Do you have to lock in at a certain BPM on certain stuff? And how do you do it on the Nemesis without that?
So I don't really. There's a tap tempo. So
right.
If I do need to kind of get close, I never really lock in BPM wise. I'm never doing anything like the edge kind of stuff.
Right.
So I'm really only using 4 delays on that thing. I have a slapback. I have a kind of a short delay. A weird warbly delay that I use on one song, and then sort of a long delay for ambient stuff. So. I'll sort of, from a macro standpoint, put that on a patch depending on what I need, and then if I need to get it super close to the tempo, then I'll just tap it in. Yeah. But you can, I think you can set up the RJM. You can make one of the buttons a tap tempo if you want. I haven't done that. I don't really need to at this point. But it's super functional. It's super technical if you want it to be, but you can also make it really kind of dumbed down, which is where I have it. So it's really, once I get it set up, I don't touch it, and I just let it, keep the patches where they are and go back and forth depending on what I need. Oh, and I also have the Walrus Audio. Is it the Monument? Is that their trim pedal?
I don't know. I don't know the name of it, but it sounds right.
That's my my one modulation pedal, but it's a pretty strong one. I like that a lot.
Nice. Would you say that there's any sleeper pieces that you're really into that maybe aren't on your board, but you think are, you recommend or you think sound really good?
I just got the Boss TR2.
Oh yeah,
is I mean, it's pretty spot on. I don't know why I was looking for all this boutique stuff. Although I do love that Walrus audio, but man, that Boss TR2 is like, that's all you need really for a trim.
Yeah. And Exactone's got some fancy mods to those too.
What is it for is it for volume loss or something, or what are they?
Well,
I did see the latch thing or whatever. You can
yeah. So I was kind of talking about this with some of the people on our Patreon, because we do like a Friday like kind of private live stream for the paying members. And so I think we were talking about this, but yeah, I looked on their site because somebody was like, "Oh, there's a latching feature on it." I was like, "Really? Like, are you sure it's not the VB2?" But check this out. I'll bring it up on the screen so you can see it. But yeah, they have this thing now where you can, they call it the multi-mode mod. So you can essentially, switch it into whenever you hold it, it'll just like trail the tremolo, and then you pull off of it just like the VB2, and then it just, stops.
That's pretty cool.
And then they do that concentric pot thing, where you where you like on the Keeley one, because Robert Keeley doesn't offer that mod anymore, because that's what a lot of guys like Tom Bukovac were using back in the day. They were using the Keeley version of the TR2. But I agree with you. If I ever did a tremolo, I would base it on 2 TR2s. You could have 2 different settings,
Okay, yeah.
So you could have like a AB for speed and depth or something like that.
That'd be killer, man.
It's fully analog. I mean, but you can always get a TR2, but it's an analog tremolo, no tap tempo. It's legit. I think it's a really good one. Super underrated.
I'm a big fan of less is more. I think, like I said, sometimes all the features sort of get daunting to me. And honestly, sometimes I feel guilty. It's, if I have 1,000 presets and like 16 different delays and all this stuff, and I'm only using one of the things, it's like, why did I get this? It's like I'm not using it to its max potential. Yeah. But, I definitely think that with simpler pedals, it's, you're focusing more on playing, hopefully, and less on, it's less of a crutch. I feel like you can use all those features as let me just, hold on one second. Let me just dial this in real quick and I can get a better thing. But
so you don't want to use an M9 though, like Derek Wells, because all those Maren Morris parts are all M9.
They are all M9. I wouldn't mind getting one, actually. That's for sure. I don't know if I'd use it live.
It has MIDI.
Well, then I have to figure out MIDI. Or I'll take it down to Barry and the guys down at Exactone and see if they'll set it up for me.
That way you could nail it. You could ask Derek for all his presets.
God, that'd be nice.
But I went and bought one. Of course, you used them on other people's rigs, but I went and bought one for myself after the Derek Wells conversation.
What what are they like? You can get them used for $300 or so, can't you?
Oh, way less than that. I think I got mine for $180 or something like that. It was like in the box. It was like never used. Some guy on Craigslist had it locally here, so I just went and picked it up. But I think you can actually still get them new. I think they made so many. There's just like stockpiles of them. And, Guitar Center still. So,
Oh, other sleeper pedals though, and not necessarily sleeper. This is just a favorite of mine. I'm not cool enough to use fuzz. I've never really known how to use. I always feel like it turns to mush, and I'm just not cut out for that stuff. But the one fuzz pedal that I do frickin' love is this guy, the Jex Tellez Dizzy Tone. You ever played with these? Yeah.
That guy we were talking about earlier, Rhett Schull, he's a huge fan of the Jex Tellez stuff.
It's really cool, and it's got like a gated sort of thing to it, so it doesn't squeal when you pull your hands off the guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I ever am looking for like a fuzz sort of thing, I like. It's almost like an overdrive fuzz. If I can find that kind of, walk that fine line, then I can use it. But I never really figured out the Big Muff.
Well, there's different versions of the Big Muff, so it depends on which one you go for. But What about like your guitar situation when you're touring? How many guitars do you typically take with you on tour?
Usually I'll have I might have 8 out on the road. I have a 6-slot stand on stage with me. And so I'll generally, for a show, I'll usually only have 8. And then maybe, during the tour, I'll swap out one or two here and there. But my go-tos for a while have been a Collings I-35, which is kind of like their 335, semi-hollow.
Yeah.
And it's a badass guitar. I love that thing. And I play a lot of my slide stuff on that.
Is it in open tuning or is it all standard?
No, I do standard tuning. I can play open tuning, but for some reason I feel more versatile if I'm playing standard, because then I can switch to the chord. I can play a lot of melody stuff in open tuning, but I haven't got all my chords down.
Yeah.
So it's definitely usually always standard tuning.
Okay.
And then I have a Collings baritone, which is a monster guitar. I don't know if you've ever owned a baritone, but it's like a whole new tonal palette, but you don't have to learn anything new.
Yeah.
So I use that on a bunch of stuff. I have a Cooter caster, just a parts caster that I put together that I use for slide stuff too. I picked up a custom shop Strat a year or two ago that I've had out on the road, and I like that thing a lot. Strats are tricky, man. I've never been a Strat guy. I've always wanted to be. It's like the same thing with fuzz pedals, but I feel like you have to learn. You learn how to play a guitar, and then you have to learn how to play a Strat. It's like it's its own thing.
Or you just start with a Strat, and then you never have to learn another guitar.
Sure. But I've really enjoyed that custom shop Strat.
What kind of custom shop Strat is it?
It's like it's a 57 or something like that. Okay. It's like shoreline gold.
Nice.
Relict maple neck, but it's got a big old fat neck, and I love that.
Yeah.
What else do I have? Oh, I recently picked up a 67 335.
Oh, nice.
Which has been super cool. It has, it's lower output pickups, which I dig it.
Yeah.
There's a little more clarity to it and a little less of that honk.
I don't know what you paid for it, but I always found the late 60s 335s, you can get them at a smoking deal.
I traded a guy on Craigslist some stuff, so it was just kind of a
because I have
rearranging of gear.
I think I brought my 68 one to that video that we did.
Yeah.
And that one, I probably got that 2 or 3 years ago on Craigslist, and I think it was $2,600. Yeah, same color as mine, except mine had a Bigsby on it that was converted to an ABR1, and so it's got some holes,
snake bites
that were patched, but for whatever it was, I think it was like 25 or 2,600.
Take it.
Oh yeah, like
all day long.
It was less money than a custom shop,
sure.
335, and so I was like, well, why not? It needed a little bit of work. Like it needed the frets needed to be done.
Yeah, I had a refret on this one
because the guy who used it before me, he was a jazz guy, and he had like a wound G on it with 12s and original frets, and they were just kind of like obliterated. So it needed new frets, and there's something else that was not original about it. Oh, it had non-original tuners. Yeah,
I had to replace mine. It came with the big metal Grovers.
Yeah,
and I just I don't know, aesthetically I wanted to have the tulips tuners.
Yeah. Now, did you get the ones with the double?
No, I actually noticed that the other day. I had my guy in Nashville do it, and
because there's a company that I found that has the late 60s double lip tulips, and they weren't that expensive. They're maybe, I don't know, 80 bucks or something like that.
Ah, hell, I think that's what I paid for mine.
And you can pay a little extra, and they'll put a little patina on them, you know, so it doesn't
grime.
So it doesn't look, you know, like you have this really shiny tuner with this guitar that's, you know, from 1968.
Totally.
So I did do that. This guy didn't put Grovers on it. He just put like the newer, like Gibson, you know, standard tulip tuners on them. So they looked really like white, shiny chrome, and then all the other hardware was pretty well beat up. So, so I opted to change those out. But other than that, I mean, you know, I probably put, I don't know, what's a refret go for these days? $500, something like that.
Yeah, I think I paid $450 or something.
Yeah, so you know, for that investment in it, it was pretty, you know, still well under what a custom shop, you know. So anybody out there who's thinking about 335, look for the late 60s ones. You can definitely find them for, you know, I'd say I got a great deal, but I think like 3,000 to 4,000 is pretty standard, and I think that's what a custom shop 335 is going for these days.
Well, and everyone's chasing PAFs and everything. It's like I think the patent number pickups on, you know, in the late 60s stuff are
they're
killer.
great. They're great. Yeah, mine sounds great. In fact, I'm going to our showroom soon to pick up, you know, I have like an old Marshall, like a 50-watt, you know, Marshall, you know, vintage one that I'm going to bring over here, and you know, need to. Now that I got my studio rack going, you know, we got to up the game and get all the right gear in here.
Damn straight.
Get the Marshall. You got to start touring the Marshall, Bennett.
You know, I've never owned a Marshall, and I don't even think I've ever played through a Marshall.
Really?
Yeah.
You've never just gone to a Guitar Center and plugged into a JCM 2000 or something?
No, I never have. Maybe I'm missing out on something. I love Fender stuff, man. I love my Deluxe Reverb. I love that Bassman.
What's a Marshall but a Fender, you know?
Yeah. There's something about the there's like a high end to the Fenders that I like. You know, I feel like a lot of the new amps kind of miss that too.
Well, people are afraid of treble, that's for sure.
I love treble, and maybe it's because I'm going deaf or something, but I can't get enough chime. And obviously, I don't want ice pick shrill tone or anything, but I guess on the other end, what I don't like is I feel like a lot of the new boutique builders are just like cramming bass in there, and I think it sounds really impressive in a showroom or at the store, and it sounds huge and but then you get it in a band context, and it's like I can never dial out enough low end.
Well, in most Fenders, if you look at some of the classic guys, you know, Eric Johnson, Stevie Ray Vaughan, like whatever, the bass is off on all their Fender amps.
Yeah, I mean, I run mine like at 2 maybe, but the high end is so pleasing, I think, on those amps, and it's kind of a sweet thing up there. But that's kind of where I sit. Although the Morgan I use, that SW50R is I think it's great, and there's not too much low end. It's got plenty of chime, and it's just a great pedal platform.
What speaker do you use in your Deluxe?
What's that?
What speaker do you use in your Deluxe?
Oh, I have an ET65.
Okay.
And it's perfect for that amp.
That's like the G1265 equivalent from Warehouse
Guitars. Yeah. And I've had that in there for years. I love it. They had recommended that, and I took them up on it, and it's been perfect. I've never wanted anything else in there.
Now I'm gonna tell you a sleeper speaker for Deluxe Reverb that Tom Bukovac turned me on to years ago.
Lay it on me.
Is the classic Lead 80
Really?
Celestion. Not what a lot of metal guys are using the classic Lead 80. It's kind of like a Mesa Boogie Black Shadow. But that is a great speaker in a Deluxe Reverb.
Sure. I'll have to look into it.
You don't need to do any sort of treble, mod. You don't have to clip that cap, for the bright cap on it.
Yeah.
If you use the classic Lead 80, it's going to mellow that right out. And so I have that in I have a 64, it's the one that says Fender Electric Instrument Company. Doesn't have a Fender logo on the grill cloth. Another good Craigslist find.
Craigslist is the way, man. That's pretty much where I do all my dealings.
It is incredible. I mean, and you're out what now in North Carolina?
Yeah.
So do you find that there, because I have, don't want to give up all my secrets, but I use this app, which I'm sure is no mystery to Craigslist people, called Olive Craigs.
Yeah, you can look for it everywhere. Because it is a pain in the ass when you have to go city by city.
Yeah. In the old days, that's how you used to have to do it before the apps existed. But now, I'll look for something and, and a lot of times I don't even, for smaller stuff, a lot of times the guys that are like wheeling and dealing the stuff that I want, they know about our brand. And so a lot of times I can just trade pedals for stuff, which is great, because I'm happy to do that anytime somebody has something they want to trade for pedals. I'll give them whatever they want. It's a great deal for me and it's a great deal for them. Even if they just wanted to turn around and sell the pedals, they'd still be at a net benefit. And for me, because obviously my cost is much lower than the retail price, it works out for me. It's like I got a Rivera era concert Fender head, which is, I think, the most underrated Fender clean amp of all time is the early 80s versions of the Paul Rivera era like replicas of the blackface stuff, that had channel switching. And the Overdrive is not bad on it at all, but it's a great just 60-watt clean Fender, great reverb, they're fantastic. And some guy traded me a couple pedals for this Paul Rivera concert head, and it's great because the challenge for me is that, in the studio here, I have some load boxes and stuff like that, but I also have a 412 that's sitting underneath our guest room floorboard. And when we bought the house, you can lift up the floorboard, and it's got like an ISO chamber where the 412 is like laying down on its back, and then there's like a cutout so the speaker cable can rest without putting any stress on it. And then I just have 4 mics on it, one on each speaker, and then I had a guy build like a baffle that kind of helps isolate the 4 speakers from each other. And so, I have a G1265 in one, and I have a greenback in another, and I have a Celestian Gold in another, and then I'm trying to think what the other one that's in there right now. I think it's a Alessandro like 12, like whatever his GS65 or something like that. So it's over 100. You can put, it has over 100 watts of power in there, so you can pretty much put anything you want into it. And then you can just select what speaker you want, but it's all wired to 8 ohms. So the challenge for me is, even though you could use a 4 ohm Fender into it, you're going to lose some power because you're mismatching the impedance. So it's always hard because there's not a lot of Fender heads that come in at 8 ohms. You have the Showman, the single Showman, which is made for a single 15, that's 8 ohms. The Deluxe Reverb, the Princeton, but not a lot of head options other than the Showman. So this concert is perfect because it's 8 ohms, 60 watts, has the classic Fender sound, and it works great. So that's
my basement is 8 ohms for some reason.
Well, they probably, it couldn't be stock.
I don't know. I just know that my amp tech checked it out and said it was 8 ohms. Did they? Because it's a 61, so it's early. Weren't they doing 15s?
Well, let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, it's a 61, so it's the blonde. So let's see. Fender, Bassman.
I swear they were doing. There was a second. Maybe they had 115 cabs with those.
All right, let's see.
But I'm no historian.
You could be right. I'm looking. The impedance on the 6G 6A Bassman said that was okay. That's 62, 64. Let's see about 61. So this would have been blonde still.
Tube rectifier. You're about to call me out in front of all your viewers, aren't you?
No. I'm just looking. I'm curious for myself because I'll go and buy one if it is. It looks like the blonde Bassman, the 6G6, the 61 to 63. It says it's still 4 ohms, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't work with 8. You just lose a little power. and now I see one here that is. Let me just share this with you here so you can see what I'm referencing. So I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. Now it looks like this Bandmaster. There was a 4 ohm, or in 61 there was an 8 ohm impedance option for the Bandmaster.
Okay.
But I don't see it for. So here's the 66A.
My only defense is Fender was doing whatever the hell they had hanging around at the time, right?
Yeah, it is possible.
So
maybe possible.
I got a weird one.
But yeah, I think that and also changing the transformer. I think now there's so many good options. I mean, I've had to do it I have a 66 Princeton, and I had to change the transformer in it. I had lent it to somebody that was using it with an aux box, and they had it like set up in the aux in a rack, and if you plug into the speaker out in it, it disables the load. And so they had it in a rack, and they had it wired into an interface where they always had the speaker cab connected, but they didn't always connect it through to a speaker cabinet. And so they just leave it floating there. And so, the Princeton, it didn't have a load. And so I had to replace the transformer, and I replaced it with one of, I think they're called like Classic Tone or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But obviously this could just be me selling myself a load of goods here by saying this, but I really seriously didn't notice. I mean, it sounded great still to me, and I didn't notice, I mean, there was some stuff about it that wasn't original already. Like I added a mid-range control to it on the back of the amplifier. I also did that on my Deluxe, by the way. I put a mid-range control on it on the back. And I had changed the speaker in the Princeton to a Legend, an Eminence Legend.
Did you stick with the 10-inch, or you go to 12?
I went to a 10, and I'll tell you why. And I think that I think the problem with doing 12s in Princetons is if you have a problem with low end, you're really going to have a problem with low end, because you're just cramming, you're taking up even more space on that baffle and something that's already pretty boxy. I mean, certainly guys have done it. I mean, Mesa Boogie, wouldn't be Mesa Boogie unless they were cramming, EV 12Ls into a Princeton cabinet that was, hot rodded to be 100 watts. But I never found it to be. I found it. You just had so much uncontrollable bass that couldn't be dialed out. Yeah, I've done it before, but I did it actually on a 68, like a later Princeton, where I put a 12-inch. Yeah, and it was just too hard to. I ended up just putting it through an extension cabinet to a separate 112 that was sort of a normal size cabinet, because it was sort of unusable. It's too much low end.
Yeah.
Unless you put like a tube screamer or something that would really tighten it up,
That's why I like that. Not to derail, but that King of Tone pedal. I feel like it sucks out some of the low end when you kick it on. I mean, so for like humbuckers, I'm a big fan of those, or the Prince of Tone.
Yeah. I always found that you had to have a lot of gain or you had to use there wasn't a lot of gain in that pedal, just like in the regular blues breaker.
I have the gain set at like 3 o'clock or something like that. It's pretty hot.
But I love the standard. I have an old original Marshall blues breaker on the wall over there that I really like, which is the impetus of the King of Tone. And those are really cool. Obviously, it's not 2 of them, but in series like it is on the King of Tone. But cool pedals nonetheless. So we did a little backtracking into the blues breaker territory, but yeah, I think that there's all to say. Classic lead 80 in the Deluxe reverb is the one.
I'll have to get on Craigslist, start poking around.
They're not expensive, I think a classic lead 80 is like the speaker that they have a surplus of that they're trying to get rid of
for $60 or something.
Let's see. I'm curious. Classic lead 80.
I was using their Alnico creams for in my 212 for a second, and those are. Have you messed with those yet?
No, I haven't.
They're pretty killer.
All right, here you go, Bennett. Reverb.com, Classic Lead 80, $29.
Ooh, I'm all about it.
If you want a new one, you can get it for $95. That one's $149. So they're certainly not. They're not. It's not like buying a Celestian Gold or something like that. You can.
Yeah.
You can
hey,
definitely.
If Bukovac swears by it might be worth checking out.
Yeah, I think
that guy knows what he's doing. I think
he does. Also, another M9 guy.
Yep. Yeah.
With all these guys.
I'll get on board with it. You just got to give me a second.
You got to do it. The M9. I'm gonna build and one of the future builds that I do for the YouTube channel will be like building like a Nashville centric rig. So it's gonna have the Nobles and the Mostortion and
the M9
and an M9 and I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the TR2 has to be on there because that's what
should have an RC booster.
RC booster, the Vertex boost, at least amongst session guys like Derek and Tom have been using that for a long time. They use the RC booster in the beginning as like to add more gain and shape to stuff, and then they have the Vertex boost at the end as just a volume boost, no gain. And then trying to think of what else are like staples, like a Dynacomp. Bukovac has a vintage Dynacomp on some of his boards. Is there a compressor that you think is more appropriate Nashville compressor?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of is it the SP compressor, the exotic? I feel like that's on a lot of boards, just that little small guy. I've been using the Fermata, the XTS Fermata, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I have like a love-hate thing with compression. I don't really. I don't want to hear it, but I want to know when it's not on. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of the only time I use compression.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and Memory Mans. Everybody's got Memory Mans.
I do not have a Memory Man. I need to get. Man, am I even a Nashville guitar player?
It's because some of that you're splitting your time between North Carolina, so you have a little bit of a removed sensibility of what you need. Your compass is a little off because you're not in there enough.
God, man, I'm shooting myself in the foot. I got to commit.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think what else. What else would you need to be a Nashville? I think that's kind of.
Oh, you need a Jeff Sin guitar.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We were talking about guitars. We got derailed, but those are my. You can't be in a country band and not have Telecasters, and I got a Jeff Sin Pomona last year, and it's badass. That's kind of my main Tele now.
Are those more expensive than custom shop guitars, or about the same?
I got mine used, so I think it was around $2,000 or so. I don't, he doesn't make a whole lot of them. It's just Jeff's a one-man operation, and he just kind of does them as he pleases. So they kind of go out to like those in the know. There's like a family friends list, I think, and they go quick. But last time I saw, I think some people are trying to sell them for like $3,000 on Reverb.
Yeah, I see this one right here.
That one's. I think that one's been up there for a while.
Maybe it's been returned.
$3,500. Jesus.
Well,
I think that's more than they cost new.
$2,750 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're great guitars.
Yeah.
I love mine. And then I have a Revelator Telecaster, which is another builder up in Jersey, I think. But that kind of rounds out my touring quiver.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's kind of incredible that you got, in relatively short order after, University of Georgia. I mean, I think amongst probably people in the musician scene, they know of Montreal. I mean, I certainly, knew of them. I didn't know until we talked that you had any affiliation with them. And then, that going straight into Maren Morris. And I mean, between the time that you started that showcase and she was actually, on arena stages, how many years was that? A year?
Well, we did the first thing we really did was the Keith Urban. I mean, we did a radio tour, just doing acoustic, her and I. But then the first real tour we did was the Keith Urban tour, and we were first to 3. So we were going on, the sun was still out. And
yeah, I remember.
But even though we were first to three, it's like there was the difference between the first show of that tour and the last show of that tour. Like, there weren't a lot of people in the audience that first show for our slot. But then by the end of it, I mean, we had a whole chunk of people singing along. And then the next year was Sam Hunt. And it just, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And I mean, I think after that Keith Urban tour, a lot of people knew who she was. And,
now a lot of those people that she was opening for are going to be opening for her.
We'll see what happens, man. We got to get back to shows first.
Yeah.
That was kind of a kick in the gut this year. Everybody's kind of getting screwed in some capacity, but we were all really excited because this was going to be our headlining.
Yeah.
And we'd done headlining stuff before, but this was our first big headlining tour.
Yeah.
We were headlining Red Rocks and doing all these cool festivals and to have all this kind of happen right now in the midst of all the momentum and all the excitement, it was kind of upsetting, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. There's no way through except to kind of live it.
Just bite your lip.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, one quick memory that I want to share about that first time that I saw you that I thought was kind of funny. Speaking of Keith Urban, when you said his name again, it kind of jogged my memory. I remember during soundcheck, he was playing Pink Floyd songs as their soundcheck. I don't know if you remember that.
Man, his sound checks were epic. That dude, is just the nicest guy. He's a mega star, but he's just normal. He'll sit down and have lunch with you, and just such a cool dude. But he just loves playing guitar, and it's really cool. He'll go out there and he'll just work on his. The band will leave the stage, and he'll just be up there for another hour, 2 hours, just working on tone. And
he was playing Time or something like that. He was like working on the solo from Time, and you could just hear him just going off on it.
Yeah. God. And his amps. He started out with like some mid 50s high powered twins, and then that wasn't working, so he brought out the Dumble, and then that wasn't working, so he brought out like the Friedman, but then he wanted the real thing, so he got like a 68 Marshall, and then that didn't work. What's funny though is he ended up on a Showman. Like that was the amp that he kind of settled on. He has like $400,000 worth of other amps, but he settled on this Showman that had been modded to be like 140 watts.
Yeah, they're actually really good. I have a 100-watt Showman head at our studio, but for most of the stuff we do, it's just like too stiff.
Yeah.
And I never really got into it to, figure out if there was an easy way to kind of soften up that front end. But I always just found them to be like, more unforgiving than even a twin reverb.
Yeah. Well, man, he ran that thing through a 412, and it was backstage, just pointed off into the distance, and if you walked in front of it, it'd shave your hair off. It was so freaking loud, but God, it sounded great.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that really has the guitar chops to match, that stuff. It's always kind of funny that you see a guy like Tom Bukovac or Dan Huff, get guitar credits on an album for Keith Urban. Presumably he could play any of those parts himself.
Sure.
But I think the best guys really understand that they're casting, characters, like in a movie or something like that, and that, casting Tom Bukovac as a guitar player for You'll Think of Me and, the part that he came up with to open, with that baritone line, like Keith probably wouldn't have come up with that same line, and that really kind of made the song,
everybody has their own perspective or they're coming from a different place. So I think, there's nothing wrong with asking for help or having someone else come in and give a try at something. I think it definitely helps push your music to a new arena, a new destination maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Bennett, I sincerely appreciate you indulging my questions about your career and playing with Maren Morris and kind of being there from the ground floor and your sleeper gear tips and talking to us about your vintage amplifiers and guitars. This is all really cool stuff for me, and I think that the people that watch this are definitely into learning all these different sleeper tricks and stuff like that. I think a lot of people are so set on the, as what I call it is the everybody's kind of being dictated by the boy who cried wolf or the boy who cried
totally.
tone, and kind of running to the new thing. So it's good to hear, you're downsizing, you're keeping it simple. It's, King of Tone, Ultraphonics, the source audio stuff, and just using a really abbreviated switcher that's sort of foolproof for your gig. And
I think less is more, man.
Yeah.
And, you just stick with what you know, and it's easy to get caught up in all this stuff with all these Instagram guitarists and whatnot, and
yeah.
Showing off pedal. I just geek out on pedal board pages on Instagram all day, but I'm the worst of them. So, but if you find something that works, there's no reason to kind of look for something else.
Yeah.
There's always a reason. Hell, I do it, but it's just like, stick with what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to do another episode about how we scour Craigslist for the ultimate
That's where I got,
deals.
man, I got quick story. That Bassman I have, there was a guy in Asheville, North Carolina, and he had a 61 Bassman, and he had a 62 reverb unit. And I won't say how good of a deal I got on it, but I got one hell of a deal on that thing. It was a partial trade with a guitar that I hated.
What was the guitar that you gave him?
It was a 335 Gibson, but it was just busted. It worked fine, but it was so stiff and sterile and shitty, and I just hated that guitar.
Huh.
I acquired it. I didn't intend to acquire the guitar. It just kind of ended up with me. But anyways, I traded that a couple bucks, and I got these two great pieces of gear. But that reverb unit just drips. It's so freaking cool.
So you don't tour with it though?
What's that? Oh, no. It's the pedals get there. You can pretty much nail it with the pedals, and it's less to worry about and less to drop.
Yeah. I got a Silverface reverb tank recently.
I didn't even know they made Silverface reverb tanks.
I didn't either. I always see the blonde or the blackface ones. This one has a silver panel on the top. It doesn't have a drip edge.
Huh.
But it looks like a silver faceplate, and it sounds great. I haven't gone inside to see what the circuit difference is between the blackface version, but
hey, if it works, it works.
Sounds really great, because we were struggling, and the reason why I got it is I was doing this Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of like tone thing with my buddy Ford Thurston at our LA showroom.
I think did you post that already? I think I maybe saw it.
I did, yeah. But we really struggled because most of the Fender heads that we have in there don't have reverb, and so you can get kind of the core tone, but if you listen to any Stevie Ray Vaughan track isolated, it's really a lot of reverb, ton of reverb on it.
Yeah.
And, the Pro Tools, stuff and the plugins through UA and stuff like that, they could kind of get close, but it wouldn't really do the Stevie thing, where you have the reverb, running into the front of a Fender amp, to really do it. And so, we ended up using a pedal, the Fender FRV 1, which is a great digital reverb that sounds like a spring reverb. But I was like, man, we really need to get one of these Fender reverbs. And so I was kind of looking around, and everything was a reissue, and I was like, man, I really want a real one. And then this tube reverb that was like a late 60s came up, and it was a great deal. So I ended up getting that. But I want to know, before we finish, this is the last question.
Yeah.
What's the best deal you ever got on a piece of gear, Craigslist or otherwise? Like the differential wise, in terms of the value of it versus, what you paid or what you traded for it.
Oh, God. Well, so it's sort of a multi-tiered thing, but I had an acoustic guitar that I traded for a slightly better acoustic guitar. Neither were really stellar in terms of tone or anything. But there was a guy in Nashville selling a 1949 J45, and he wanted way too much for it. But I said, hey, I'll take this guitar and I'll give you $1,000 on top of it or something like that. Yeah. And then we showed up and I looked at the J45 and I said, hey man, this is going to need some fret work. So let's knock off another $400. And, but all in all, I think, my trade and cash value total was about $1,800, and that 49 J45 is worth about $5 or $6 grand, I think. So yeah, that might be my best score, but, that in the basement was a good one. But yeah, that's a funny question. I think that's probably my best one.
Yeah.
You got any sweet scores? It's hard to brag about them because I feel like part of it is like ripping someone off.
Usually I'm pretty good about telling people if I think that there's like, if they're really under market on stuff. I can think of a time where I really got ripped off, or I really wish I hadn't done it. I'm trying to think of like the best deal that I ever got on something.
I was selling a pedal. It was just a reverb pedal, but I had, it's all anonymous on Craigslist and everything. I got an email and I click it open and it's a friend of mine who was like being mildly dickish and like super lowballing on the price. And I wrote him, Alan, dude, it's me. Like, what are you doing? Like, quit being a jerk. So that was kind of funny. Of all the people in Nashville.
Yeah. The one that I really regret and that I kind of, I was sort of stupid about is I had one of the original John Mayer OM 28 Martins.
Yeah.
And they had a super customized, like handmade version. And then a couple years later, they came out with like a production version that they made thousands of. I think this one they made, I don't know, like 183 or something like that of. So I got one of them and I had paid, I think I paid $2,500 for it, which is a pretty good deal to begin with. And I think a couple years later, they were going for way more money. I think now they're going for like 20,000.
What?
Or something crazy. Like maybe not 20,000, but like 10 grand at least, maybe 12 grand.
Just that's got to be for collectability, right? It's not.
I'm sure it's for collectability. But anyway, I wasn't playing really any acoustic guitar at the time. I was in college, and I was just doing all like rock stuff, And, so I was like, oh man, I don't know if I really need the acoustic guitar. I could just get something lesser, And so this guy, hit me up, and he's like, yeah, those Martins, like those signature models, they always don't do that well. I can't remember which signature model he said that he had, and it lost a bunch of value. It was like Lisa Loeb or like some like 90s, like singer songwriter. And, and I was like,
I want that guitar. I want that model.
Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And so he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll trade you. And I remember it wasn't even like a cool Gibson acoustic. It was like one that it wasn't a J45. It had like a cutaway, and I don't even remember what model it was. It was like one of the Montana.
Cutaway acoustics that's a touchy subject right there.
Yeah. And so anyway, he's like, yeah, so I'll trade you this and a Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat for it, and Stevie Ray Vaughan Strats at the time, this is in the early 2000s, were probably going for like $800 or $900,
Were those Mexican or American?
They were American.
Yeah.
They're American. And so I remember I did the trade and I felt pretty good about it for like a year. And then I looked at how much those John Mayer guitars are going. It was already going for like $5 grand. No. And I was like, yeah, I totally got screwed. Cause probably the Gibson acoustic he traded me was probably about $1,200, and the Steve Revo was about $900. And I just remember like feeling so dumb. And now seeing how much they go for, I'm just like, man, that was so dumb.
Well, the cool thing, you've heard that story about the guy that he started with like a paper clip and he traded for a pen, and he just kept trading and he eventually got a house. It's like you can kind of, if you're smart with it, you can do that with Craigslist. You can trade a pedal for a better pedal and trade for an amp and build your way up, and you can kind of subsidize like your collection through just trading up.
It's really tough though, like right now, it's a fine line because there's so many people that need to generate income, and one of their only for musicians in particular, one of the few ways that they have to
selling gear,
to be able to create income for themselves is by selling gear. And so I do notice right now there's a ton of really, really great deals on stuff, at least in the Bay Area, which is where Craigslist started in San Francisco. We probably have the most inventory. And that's why I wondered, like in North Carolina, where you are, like there couldn't possibly be the same inventory of equipment.
Nashville's super strong.
Yeah, I can
Asheville,
imagine.
North Carolina there's nothing crazy, but every now and then it sort of works in your favor because since the market isn't really here, if someone does put up something cool, you can kind of...
You're not competing with a bunch of people.
Yeah. And the prices will be good. And so it can work.
Yeah, I mean, I get good deals all the time, not like smoking deals. Probably, actually, I think the best deal I've gotten in recent times is I got a Mark II C+, the classic Mesa Boogie that everybody used in the 80s, Steve Lukather and Metallica and guys like that. I think it's probably the quintessential Mesa Boogie amplifier, if you can find one that has the simulclass and the graphic EQ and the kind of the fully loaded 100-watt one.
Someone needs to bring the graphic EQ back on amps.
Yeah, it's really cool. But I didn't find it on Craigslist. I found it where our showroom is. The locker that's across from us is from this band called America. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah.
They did a song called Ventura Highway that was really popular. A lot of people thought
Didn't America do Horse with No Name?
Did Horse with No Name. A lot of people thought it was Neil Young, but it was America. Yeah. And so they have a locker across from us, and a lot of the bands every once in a while will do sort of like these gear sell-off open houses out of their gear lockers, between tours or stuff like that. Where they'll say, okay, we'll be here for Saturday from noon to 4.
It's like an estate sale.
Yeah, and they kind of just clear out old stuff that they have that's just taking up space in their locker that they don't use anymore. And so I remember the guy, I was in there early on a weekend, and the guy was sort of staging the stuff, and they had this Mesa Boogie out there, and it had stenciled America on the side. It was a 112 combo. And I said, "Oh, do you know what model this is?" He's like, "No, I don't." And we've had this for a long time, and we've kind of just used it to harvest tubes for other amplifiers and stuff like that. We're not really, we haven't toured with this since the early 90s. We haven't used this amp. We used dual rectifiers, and I think that they had a Boogie endorsement, so they kind of just used whatever the newest Boogie was, and they tour with it. And I'm sure that Mesa Boogie would give them whatever, because they, even though maybe they weren't as current as they were in the 70s. It's
America, man.
Yeah, it's America. So I said, well, how much? Do you know what version it is? And he didn't really know much about it. So I kind of looked in the back, and there's like a piece of tape on the transformer that says 2C+. And I have a good relationship with the guys at Mesa Boogie. I took a picture of it, and I sent it to one of the guys I know. He's like, okay, let me ask Mike, which version this is, just to confirm. And he texted me back 5 minutes later. He's like, yeah, it's a 2C+. You should get it, if it's a good deal. And so I asked the guy how much it was. He's like, I'll tell you what, I know he needs new tubes. Like, how's $600 sound? And, so I paid him $600, and I immediately just sent it. And it came with a road case too that said America on it.
Hell yeah.
And so I sent it back up to Mesa Boogie, and had, Mike, who is the guy that built all those amps back when they were made, and he just, restored it for me and made it all stock. And man, that was a killer deal.
They have that new, is it the Boogie line or something like that? What's the new stuff they're doing? It's kind of like American Fender inspired, California.
I don't know what it's called, but they're cool. I actually I played the Fillmore one, and
that's the Fillmore is what and they have a 100-watt and a 50-watt or something.
They sound really good.
I played one. I think it was out in the West Coast somewhere, and it was kind of nice.
Yeah, they do a good job, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy. If you go to their shop, it's in Petaluma, which is from where I am in Oakland, it's maybe 30 miles, 40 miles away.
And that Fillmore it's two of the exact same channel.
I don't know. I don't know the details.
I think that's what it is, which I thought was kind of cool. It's you could, I don't know,
have one way and
yeah, just kind of have two different flavors of the same voice, which I don't really use channel switching amps.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind having two different shades of kind of a similar voice. Maybe for two different guitars, humbuckers and single coils or something like that.
Yeah, I think the challenge with Mesa Boogie is they sort of got typecast into the metal thing because of the dual rectifier and the triple rectifier and all this stuff.
Rectifiers.
There was all this rectifying going on at Mesa Boogie that they sort of got away from, or I think a lot of people who were like early legacy users of Mesa Boogies, like the Mark I, and that was like all the studio guys used those, like Larry Carlton and Steve Lukather. And I mean, those were the amps to have, a Mark I, Mark II, Mark III. And then as, in the 90s when the dual rectifiers came into play and you started getting guys, like John Petrucci and Limp Bizkit and like all these guys.
They're from my hometown.
Are they?
Yeah, Jacksonville, Florida.
How about that? Yeah, and so guys like that using dual rectifiers and stuff like that, it really became synonymous, I think, with a much heavier sound than some of the initial Mesa Boogies, and obviously they have to go with where their customer base is kind of coming from, but and so I think that there's people, in other words, there's people that are not giving those Fillmore amps maybe the shake that they should.
Because I might have to look into one. They have that 100 watt, and I've never had a 100 watt amp, and and I think it's a pretty good price point too.
Yeah,
for what you're getting.
They are, and I mean, if you go to their factory, man, it's insane. I mean, they really do make all that stuff, right there in California. Real human hands, and it's pretty impressive to see that people are doing it that way, and they make all their own cabinets there.
Good for them.
All that stuff. So it's a pretty significant and large operation that they have going. The other one that I think is a sleeper is the Lone Star. Is a really good amp. It's what Andy Timmons used a lot, and it's sort of like a classic Fender. At least they have one version that's more of like a classic 6L6 Fender. And I told them, man, I said, you guys would do great if you just made a simple 50 and 100 watt version of it that's just the clean channel. No drive channel, super abbreviated, because the sound of the cleans on that amp are really good. They take pedals well, all that stuff. You just need a real simple, no frills version, but we'll see what happens.
Hey, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, Bennett, thanks again.
Thanks for having me, man.
I appreciated that we kind of get a last reprisal on the Craigslist stuff, so that's cool.
Great minds think alike, man.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to getting to see you again in person, and take care and give the family my best out there in North Carolina.
Yeah, will do. Thanks for having me again, and we'll hopefully be out West Coast sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so. So that was Bennett Lewis. That was a fun conversation. I'm glad that we got a chance to connect. He's not in Nashville right now, and he's out in North Carolina. And I'm glad that we gave him a little break from getting prepared to run a kids' summer camp with his wife, whatever form that looks like during these strange times. But cool to talk gear with him, cool to talk Craigslist finds with him, and just an all-around great dude. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I want to thank everybody behind the scenes that makes this podcast possible. Kevin Walt from Blue Microphones. He gave us all the Eddy mics, all the boom arms, all the pop filters that we use so that we sound good on the podcast. And I also want to thank Hunter Harrison for mixing and editing the podcast, Mason Mejia for co-producing, and Tim Marco for all of the music. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, the Rig Doctor. See ya.